to the launching and landing land lesson.
Oh.
Today, our objective is to have you guys learn how to rig, head out, and return from a sail. After this lesson, you'll be able to rig and point out some common rigging mistakes. You'll be able to understand wind direction and its effects on maneuvering while still being able to land safely. And you'll be able to recognize conditions in which landings would be difficult or dangerous.
Ah.
First, though, we're going to talk about rigging.
Wait, Cam's cut out.
Yeah.
Oh,
Alright, so firstly, I'm going to teach you guys how to rig a Laser 1, which is the type of boat we sail. And I'm going to use lecture, and then we're going to have a discussion at the end. And also I'm have this visual aid of a diagram of a sailboat to help with explaining how to rig a boat. So the first thing that we need to do when we're rigging our sailboat is make sure we have on proper equipment. So that means that we're wearing a life jacket when we're on any dock, and especially any boats. But really just make sure you're wearing a life jacket and that your partner is too. Also, something that's crucial with rigging a sailboat is to use teamwork. So I want you guys to work in a team to do this, or imagine yourselves working in a team if we had a real boat. So the first thing that you want to rig on your sailboat is the dagger board. This is the big piece of fiberglass that slides into a slot in the middle of the boat, and you want that in your boat because it stabilizes the boat and makes sure you're not tipping while you're trying to rig it. The next thing you want to do is secure your boom into the gooseneck, which is attached to the mast. And this is where teamwork is important. One person needs to hold the boom in place while the other takes the outhaul, which is the rope attached to the end of the corner of the sail, threads it through the eyelet at the end of the boom, and then cleats it to the cleat on the upper side of the boom in the middle of it. It's crucial that the rope that's left over in excess is wrapped around the boom, because during sailing, winds can cause this rope to flap around and be irritating. The next step in rigging is to rig the rest of the cob controls, the Cunningham and the boom vane. This is done by sliding in a slot on the boom vane into the boom near where it meets the mast. And the outhaul, or the Cunningham, is rigged by threading its rope through an eyelet in the corner of the sail, down around the boom and onto a cleat that's attached to either the mast or the deck of the boat. Our next step in rigging is rigging the main sheet. Begin by putting the main sheet through a block located on the traveler at the end of the boat, and then up through a block on the end of the mast, across the boom, towards the mast, through another block, and then down to the block in the bottom of the cockpit. It is crucial that either end of the main sheet has an 8-knot tied in it, or else the main sheet will slip out of its blocks while sailing.
That's not good.
You don't want that. Our final step to rigging the boat is making sure we have a rudder and tiller so we can steer. To insert the rudder, there are 2 pegs located on it and 2 holes for the pegs at the transom or back of the boat. To slide in the rudder, there's a metal flap that also must be pushed down. This becomes much easier if teamwork is involved and your partner helps you with this. Now that the rudder is in place, we need to insert the tiller. This is done by ensuring that the tiller is underneath of the traveler. This is critical. Without the tiller going underneath of the traveler, you'll be unable to turn the boat one direction. There's also a pin located in the rudder that you put into the tiller so that it stays in place as well. The final step with rigging comes with taking a rope attached to the rudder and cleating it onto a cleat that's located on the tiller. This ensures that the rudder stays vertical in the water, and it makes steering much easier. If the rudder were to go horizontal with the water, called beaver tailing, you would have a much harder time steering the boat. So that's how to rig. So can you guys tell me again, or on the diagram, point to it, the order of things that we want to do? What's the first thing?
Start with the dagger board.
Right. Then we're going to want to do what?
The boom.
Yeah, so the boom, and the way you do the boom first is the outhaul. The outhaul you do first because it's attached to the end of the boom, meaning it'll keep the boom up.
Right.
So once it's up, then your partner and you can divide and conquer the rest of the boat, really. So you'll both want to do the outhaul and the Cunningham, and then the main sheet, which is pretty straightforward. But do you guys remember what's really important about using the main sheet?
Tying down the end, or one of the ends.
Both of the ends actually, because they're able to because the main sheet changes its position through all of the blocks. It's always changing, so you need something to stop it from being able to change at either end. So let's talk about some problems you could run into due to improper rigging.
Okay.
For example, if someone is only able to turn one direction, what's a possible something they made a mistake while rigging? It has to do with the tiller of the boat.
They didn't put it like under the what's it called?
The traveler.
The traveler.
Right. So you need to make sure it's under the traveler. What if someone lost control of their mainsail while they were out on the water? They were pulling the main sheet and it was doing nothing to control the boom. What's possibly happened there?
It's not tied down. Yeah.
That's right. That's good. And finally, what would be a cause of the boat being slow and unresponsive to tiller movements? This has to do with how the rudder is in the water. Do you remember what? And what do you do to stop a beaver tail from happening?
You have to tie it.
Right. So you tie the rope from the rudder, and then cleat it onto the cleat that's on the tiller. That's good. All right. Next, we're going to talk about maneuvers. All right. So maneuvering. Maneuvers are important when landing and launching. Because they're fundamental to getting out of the harbor or returning. So it's important to understand the basic concept of how a sailboat is steered. So in this diagram, we have a top-down view of a sailboat, and we've got Johnny sitting on the side here, and he's holding the tiller, and the sail is on the opposite side of him. Now, Johnny's doing this very well. It's important that if you're steering the boat, which is called being the skipper, that you're sitting on the side opposite of the sail, because it's important that all of your motions with the tiller are relative to the side of the sail, side of the boat that the sail is on. So, if you were to push the tiller towards the sail, you would turn this to the side of the boat that the sail isn't on. So if you understand, basically it's an opposite motion. So if you were to bring it away from the sail, you would turn the boat towards the direction that the sail is already on. Do you understand that? So if I'm sitting in the boat like this, and I've got the tiller in my left hand, and I'm heading this way, if I were to do this, which direction would I go?
You would go
This way?
To your right.
towards the sail.
I would go towards my... if I'm heading this way, and I'm sitting on this side, that means the sail is opposite me. So I would actually go to the right. So Zach and Cam were right. But it's all right, Julian. All right. So, back to maneuvering. So now that you understand basically how to steer a boat, let's talk about some mechanics of maneuvering and how that comes into effect while we're either heading out or coming back. We'll start with heading out. What do you guys think is the best way to efficiently get out of the harbor without making any problems?
In a straight line.
That's right. So as soon as we're out from the dock, we want to pick a point and just sail in a straight line and make sure that there's no traffic in front of us and that we're avoiding all other boats. And if we're not going to hit anything, we just head in a straight line directly out of the harbor, because there's not as good wind in there and it's dangerous. There's a lot of traffic. So it's just good to get out of there as quickly as possible. That's right. So if we're coming back though, what are some ways we could slow down the boat? How do you slow down a boat if you're sailing? Or another question,
into the wind,
what makes a boat go fast while you're sailing?
The wind.
So how would you slow down a boat
You'd go
or remove speed
against the
from it?
wind.
You can go against the wind, but you slow down as you gradually remove power from the sail. It's not just instantly as you enter the wind. So a good way of depowering the sail is turning it into the wind without tightening the sail, right? Because the sail will stay loose, flapping as your nose turns further and further up into the wind.
Right.
So if we were to be coming into a harbor at high speed, maybe what is something we would want to do to slow down?
Attack.
Attack?
Turn it into the wind.
So if we're going really fast, a good maneuver would be utilizing a full tack, which that would be called doing a 360. So doing a 360 is something we use as kind of a last resort when we're coming in and have a lot of speed. But in some cases, generally we don't even need to do a full tack. You just head up into the wind, and without tightening your sail will depower and you'll keep your momentum, but you'll eventually slow down and come to a stop. So you really and that is just called heading up. So we can either head up and do a J turn, which means we'll come down if the wind's coming down like this, you'll come down with the wind and turn up into it, losing your speed. Or if you're going way too fast, you can do a 360, which pretty much kills all of your speed. So, yeah, those are the two maneuvers we use when landing. Alright, and finally, we'll just be going over wind direction, and because it's very important when we're talking about maneuvers, because all of our maneuvers are relevant to the direction that the wind is blowing. So, what are some things that can give us clues as to what direction the wind is blowing?
You can look at if the trees are moving. Like if
Trees
you
are
see
good.
trees on the shoreline.
Maybe flags or something.
There's like what direction the waves in the water are going.
Flags are waves are good. Flags are the best option.
Okay.
If there's a flag around, it will tell you the exact direction the wind is blowing at any given moment. Trees are the next best option if there's no flag. They're a little bit trickier, but generally you can tell which direction the wind is blowing. Waves are also good, but you need water to see waves, and right now in our land lesson there's no water, so we can't see which way they're blowing by the waves. But if we were actually sailing, there would most likely be some waves that we could use. So some other important things that maybe you guys aren't thinking of are ripples. Can you think of what ripples across, like, do you know what ripples are?
Yeah.
They're like miniature waves on top of waves. Can you guys think of anything that ripples can tell us? Maybe the way the wind is changing?
Maybe the wind is changing.
And that would be called a gust. So we want to see that if there are ripples coming towards you while you're sailing, that means a gust of wind is coming in, and that's going to be some strong, powerful wind. So you need to take action to be ready for that, either by letting out the sail a little bit, or changing your course so that maybe you're not on such a fast course, or changing your course to avoid the gust entirely if you're that scared of it. So I'm going to hand out these questions, and I want you guys to just read it over and take a couple seconds to think about your answers, about what actions you should take if you're landing, depending on which way the wind is blowing into the harbor. So, Zachary, you're going to have winds blowing across the harbor. Julian, you're going to have winds blowing into the harbor. And Cameron, you're going to have winds blowing out of the harbor. So, just take a quick second and think of an answer for that.
Well, let's see. If your winds were blowing into the harbor, that means you're going to have a lot of power coming behind you going into the harbor. So you would have to do a bunch of those full tack 360s, or if it were really bad,
360s.
You might not even want to go.
That's right, that's right. There's some situations where it's maybe very easy to get out. You just need to go out on a tack, a nice favorable tack, but coming back is so treacherous that it's not even worth going out. That's good. Alright, Zach, what do you think of?
If the winds are blowing across the harbor, then you want to use your caution. Maybe use one of the J turns or head up when you're coming in.
That's good, yeah. So generally, if winds are blowing across, that means you're going to be coming in at like a beam reach, which is not super fast, but still you're going to want to use some caution for sure whenever you're landing. But especially if the winds are coming across. So what about you, Cam? What do you think?
When the winds are blowing out of the harbor, it's going to be pretty easy to have like a nice controlled entry back into land.
Yeah.
But you still have to be mindful of people that are still heading out, because they're going to be having a harder time. So
yeah, people
just
heading
don't
out
watch
will be
them.
moving pretty fast, and also they'll be definitely in your way if they're heading out and you're coming in. So yeah, you'll just want to think of right of ways while you're coming in to a busy harbor, especially. All right, that was awesome, guys. Good job.
Great.
Awesome.